Good evening. It's a pleasure to be back. I'm Mitch Edmonds. Like you, I'm very, very proud of the very talented people we have working with our students throughout the district, and very, very proud of the amazing programs that we offer to them. Tonight, the program we want to highlight is our Autistic Support Program, and we have a number of people here to help share some information. Also provided you with a handout. So we won't make this too long. We gave you some of the slides on a handout, and then we're going to go over some other information. Let me start by introducing who we have with us this evening. We have a very familiar face, Dan Curry, who is our Supervisor of Special Education, Megan Miller, Billy Hoke, Jan Pimer, and Katie Allor. They're all autistic support teachers. We have Melissa Yonchuk, who is a behavior specialist, Karen Uhas, speech and language pathologist, and then we have parents with us this evening, Jen and Doug Rowley. I didn't miss anyone, did I? Have everyone. Okay, what we are going to do is start with a short video talking about what is autism, and then we're going to hand it over to Megan.
Autism is a neurological disorder that manifests itself in behavioral, communication, and socialization deficits.
Autism is a spectrum disorder. The symptoms can range from mild to severe. Each child with autism is different. When you've met one child with autism, you've met one child with autism.
Some characteristics of autism are limited eye contact, nonverbal speech, uneven gross or fine motor development, difficulty socializing with peers, and resistance to change in routine.
Autism affects 1 in 68 children and 1 in 42 boys. Boys are 5 times more likely than girls to be diagnosed with autism. Autism is one of the fastest growing developmental disorders in the U.S. and on average costs a family $60,000 per year.
Sensory processing is a neurological process that takes place in the normally developing child. Think of the brain as a computer. We all have a process to receive and organize sensations from the environment, process that information, and make an effective adaptive response, whether behavioral, fundamental, functional, or an emotional response. With the autistic child, there are atypical responses in how they receive and respond to movement, touch, auditory, oral, or visual stimuli. Each child is unique in how they process this information, and we need to trial and determine appropriate intervention that helps them to interact, engage, and participate in the school environment with their peers, or in fine motor activities, daily living tasks, and self-regulation activities.
Hello. You just heard my colleagues explain a little bit about what autism is, and you might be wondering how we meet the needs of such a diverse group of learners. Well, we have 3 levels of support at Limerick. We're very fortunate to have those levels of support. We have itinerant, supplemental, and full-time support. In the itinerant range, students are included with their regular peers for 80% or more of their day. They use the general curriculum. They receive social skills support, and they may receive OT, PT, or speech. They also may require the support of a shared instructional assistant. In the supplemental range, students are included with their peers from 79 to 20% of their day. They receive some academic support in the autistic support classroom using the general or alternative curriculum. They receive social skills. They may require the support from an instructional assistant. And then we have our full-time, and in the full-time classroom, the students are included 19% of their day or less with their regular ed peers. There is a focus on daily living skills. They use an alternate curriculum in the autistic support classroom, and there is some exposure to the general curriculum. These students will participate in community-based instructional trips. There is an intense need for sensory input. They use augmentative alternative communication. They use the ABA methodology. They also receive social skills. They might most likely will receive OT, speech, and PT, and they would require most likely support from an individual assistant.
Okay, so from my standpoint, I'm looking more at kind of the growth in the numbers. So on December 1st, 2007, the district had 74 students, which represented 6.4% of the total special ed population with a primary diagnosis of autism. 10 years later, that number has increased to 163 students, or 11.3% of the total special ed population. As you can see, we have more than doubled our population of students with autism in the past 10 years. In just the past 4 years, we've increased by approximately 33 students. This number of students alone is challenging in terms of programming. However, we are also finding that a higher percentage of students coming in are requiring more intensive supports. So as Megan just covered, there's 3 different levels: itinerant, supplemental, and full-time. We're seeing more students entering the programs requiring that supplemental and full-time level of programming, which adds to the challenge. Looking at the projections for 18-19 school year and beyond, from my standpoint, I don't see that trend changing anytime in the near future.
So what makes the autistic support classroom different from other special education classrooms? We use specific and detailed learning strategies such as discrete trial training, which is a type of, it's one of the ABA methodologies that breaks learning down into very small parts or discrete trials and promotes an errorless learning. There's also the TEACH method, which would be the treatment and education of autistic and related communications handicapped children. That's a mouthful there. It's also known as structured teaching. With this, you're going to see a highly structured classroom. You're going to see a lot of visual schedules. You're going to see a lot of consistent routines and rules followed throughout the day. A lot of students would thrive on that. Applied behavior analysis is a set of principles that guides most of what we do in the autistic support program. This is the basis for behavioral treatment. It analyzes behavior by its form and its function, uses what motivates the students to reinforce desired behaviors and decrease less appropriate behaviors. And these principles are used to teach many different things, including social skills, daily living skills, toileting, such as toileting and dressing, and it can also help with behavioral skills and academic readiness skills.
As a student experiences a range of emotions during the day, they are taught how to acknowledge emotions and experience them in a manner that is socially acceptable. Physical regulation is what a person can do to enhance rest and relaxation in the moment or reduce pain and dysfunction. And we all have ways that we do that that are inconspicuous. These students deal greatly with this and need various strategies and abilities to do that for themselves. It might be exercise, it might be breathing, it might be weight bearing, it could be running, and it could be mindfulness. Speech and language therapy is a great need. Communication is so basic, especially to reading, because verbal language becomes before reading. Our students are nonverbal. They can be echoic. They can speak in broken or fragmented sentences, or they can type on a typewriter or an iPad. They can use a picture exchange communication system, which allows them to find form and function in their world, in their environment. iPad is a wonderful thing. The augmentative assistive technology is excellent for them. There are many programs out there to which Mrs. Yuha, our speech and language therapist, can speak to. Many of us use and acquire the necessary skills of organization to move through and complete our work over time. skills of planning, prioritizing, starting and completing tasks, all need to be taught and practiced with these students. It doesn't come naturally. Learning-related behavior is a need for our students, the ability to sit, the ability to focus, to attend, to participate, to write, to talk, to listen, to observe, to problem solve, need to be developed. Often our students become stuck, whether it's one interest or one activity. I had a student who would practice putting picture cards in the same order over and over and over again, in a specific order. I never figured it out because it was different every time, but they knew what they were doing. Oftentimes they seek only activities and knowledge about a specific subject or a specific topic. This curtails not only one's information about self and their world, but it deters conversation and social interaction. Many academic delays occur. Lots of time is spent building the educational learning foundation of behavior, executive skills, communication, self-regulation. Students with autism are unique learners, and what makes educating them so exciting is to mine for that little pathway that will tap that learning connection for each individual, for each unique learner. The need to transition and move from one event to another during the day is a big challenge. They might be moving just from English language arts to math. It might be moving from a sensory time to instruction. It might be moving from just a special area class to the classroom. Students need to learn to be okay and to make the change, and that is difficult.
Good evening. As parents and as educators, we've been so impressed by the autism program at Limerick Elementary, and we really wanted to share our story with you tonight. Our son Jack was a kindergarten student at Limerick Elementary. We intentionally describe him that way. He was not an autistic child who visited or observed. He didn't sit on the sidelines as an outsider. He belonged. And part of this inclusion was Jack's outgoing personality, his love of people, his curiosity for anything new. But the other reason he belonged in kindergarten was due to the inclusive mindset of the Limerick Elementary staff. They wrote him an IEP, they collected and used data to guide his instruction, but most importantly, they loved him. He felt safe there, and he knew he was part of a community. Just to give you a little background on Jack, he was diagnosed with developmental delay at 18 months, epilepsy by 2, autism by 3, and the constant battle to find seizure control meant just a roller coaster ride of seizure activity and also devastating medication side effects. His cognitive functioning was somewhere between 12 and 18 months in some areas, different in others. But he found a way to communicate what he needed, and all those labels and disorders meant nothing to him. He didn't know he was different. He knew love and he knew friendship, and he had fun every single day. He sang, he danced, he spread joy to everybody. He'd grab you by the hand to interact with him whether you wanted to or not. We lost the epilepsy battle this February. Jack had a strong seizure in his sleep and he never woke up. His seizures were difficult to control, to say the least, and we spent the summer of 2017 trying new medication. The side effects took a devastating toll on Jack's mood and behavior. Because it had been such a tumultuous summer, we asked to meet at Limerick in mid-August. We were fearful that school might not be a place for Jack. We were met by Dan Curry, Mitch Edmonds, Katie Eller, and Melissa Janchuk. We provided them with an update on his aggressive behavior. They assured us they could handle him, and they could. They assured us he'd learn, and he did. They assured us that he would be loved, and he was. School turned out to be the best place for Jack. Mrs. Eller, the therapy team, and classroom assistants got to know him well, as did many of the other staff members and students. They knew he needed frequent breaks, and they developed a schedule appropriate for him. Jack used his hallway time to interact with other students and staff, and he quickly became the mayor of Limerick Elementary. We live in the development across the street from the school, and it became really fun to take walks around the neighborhood this fall because Jack was greeted by name and with a smile. And it was heartwarming just to see how Jack was being accepted as a result of Limerick's inclusive culture. One of our favorite, and I think Jack's favorite, parts of the Limerick program were the community-based field trips. As we previously mentioned, he needed frequent breaks. 8 hours in a classroom or our home was not for him, and he let you know it. He benefited so much from the change in atmosphere and the chance to interact with members of our community. We also feel strongly that community members learn as much from the students as the students learn from them. Despite his struggles, we as parents learned more from him than anyone we've ever met. He taught us love, compassion, patience, and always to pay attention to what really matters in life. His memorial service confirmed that he had this impact on almost everyone he met. When we met with Mrs. Eller and Mrs. Yuha at conferences, we were pleased to hear about the implementation of new assistive technology, as well as research-based behavior strategies that were being used already in the classroom. We were updated on his IEP goal progress, but mostly we just talked about Jack. We talked about what was good. We talked about progress, and we left that meeting feeling better about Jack's future than we had in years. He hadn't made any huge academic strides yet. I mean, it'd only been a couple weeks, but he was accepted and he was valued. And I think that all parents want the same things for their children at school. They want safety, they want love, and they want quality instruction. Jack was getting that at Limerick, and so will our son Drew in a few years. We couldn't be happier that Drew will attend a school with a diverse population of learners in an inclusive environment. A huge thank you to Team Jack for all you did for him and will continue to do for your Limerick students. Thank you.
I'd like to conclude by thanking the Springford School District for inviting us to share our story. I have worked in public education for 21 years, and I can assure you, the school board members, and you, the school community, that the special education program at Springford sets the benchmark. From Mr. Curry and his special education administrators, Mr. Edmonds and the school principals, his teacher, Mrs. Eller, and her extremely devoted group of support staff, the many therapists that provide invaluable services, Mr. Rich, his bus driver, and of course, Miss Judy, the bus assistant, the Springford special education team is truly a remarkable and dedicated group. Thank you, team. And thank you, school board, for providing this team with the tools and opportunities that gave my son the best education available.
I want to personally thank Mr. and Mrs. Rowley. That was so good for my heart to hear from them. Thank you. So to summarize, Limerick has had a long history of providing comprehensive special education services to students on the autism spectrum. But what makes programming so challenging for these students is, although they have similar characteristics, each child is very unique. And it takes a team of professionals to meet these multiple needs, including special education teachers, regular education teachers who are open and flexible and accepting, speech therapists, behavior specialists, occupational therapists, physical therapists, vision therapists, and a load of wonderful regular ed children who are welcoming to these autistic support children. As we discussed previously, the number of students requiring autistic support has increased. In just 4 years, 30 more students. But in addition to the number increasing, what we're finding for Springford is that we're experiencing students who have more intensive needs that we need to service. It takes a village to raise a child. And our community at Limerick, and I mean all the community, all the staff, all the students, they've come to embrace the Autistic Support Program, and we look forward to continuing to provide a high quality education for these very special children. Thank you for your attention.